like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Wanna put it all together, this is big things. Doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real, this life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, but homie keep going. You know the saying, you can reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general, from the front I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, powered by Celsius Beverage. If this is your first time tuning in, catch all our episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. We come to you with the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida. Always find the do's and don'ts of running a business. I'm joined by my co-host, the director over at the Adams Center for Entrepreneurship, Kevin Cox, the man, the legend, the myth over there. So, Kevin, what's going on right now in college and also the tech runway? I keep bumping into people. They're going through tech runway these days. I'm hearing lots of success stories.
Yeah, so we just started our newest class, which is class 14 at the Tech Runway. We've got some really promising companies in there. School's kicked off, getting settled in. Parking's a little rough, but it's okay. Most exciting thing going on right now, though, is pretty obvious, and we're ready to go live. We are live. The Croc Tank pitch competition is open for applications. And
sounds cool.
Just what is the Croc Tank? Well, it's kind of like a little TV show called the Shark Tank, because we're going to have Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. We're also going to have Damon John, and we're going to have Mark. Three of the investors from the TV show, the Shark Tank, here at FAU on December 4th, live in our student union in front of 2,500 people, getting pitched from three FAU entrepreneurs for real live investment. It's going to be pretty wild.
So when you say FAU entrepreneurs, define that a tad more, right? Someone who is an alumni,
we have
right, participates in things around FAU, like donor,
that's a great
I do stuff. I'm obviously doing the show with FAU, but I'm not an alumni of FAU, for example. Can I apply?
Well, in fact, you can apply. And I know Al's got a big update coming soon, so you might be one of the savvy competitors who makes it near the top. We're going to have 3 tracks for that competition because the Sharks like to invest in different stage companies. So if we only had students, that's all pretty early stage, but we are going to have a student track. One current student is going to be up there pitching. One tech runway company, current or alumni. There's also a track for Tech Runway, and then there's a third track for those later stage companies who want to compete, and that's Research Park and recent Research Park alumni. From those 3 tracks, we're going to pick 3 internal winners, and then we're going to do it live.
Oh, so this is hard to get in. You're talking like one for each track gets placed, in front of all these folks, but that's awesome. That's pretty cool.
The Sharks' time comes at a premium, so
yeah, the best of the best.
Yep.
Well, we got that big update with Owl coming, so perfect timing, right? I hope that Owl, we get to 50,000 people by the time December comes around, and we would be a perfect fit. So I'm excited.
And I'll see what you can get done by September 30th when those applications close. And then you can keep building and really make it more impressive for an investment. Because my goal, selfishly, like I got to make somebody make a deal.
Yeah, you do.
If we don't get a deal going, it's going to be super exciting when it starts. But if it's pass, it's not a great event, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look that for TV either.
To make a deal. I need a little transaction, some negotiation, some big cheers, some culmination, not like a pass. That wouldn't be great. So we got to get the best.
And also, you do know, like it could be, a student that has a really good idea, and it's like, here's $25,000, right? And yeah, that will get the student off the ground, but it's a lot different, right? If one of those other seasoned businesses like Owl, right, gets a check for like $2 to $6 million, right? Totally different world, right? Because the news around this town will just go crazy, of course, if that occurs.
Yeah. So a
That's
lot of
awesome.
work, but it's worth it. It's going to be great.
Cool. Well, let's get into Charlie's background today. Charlie James is here in the studio. He runs Focal Point Growth, and he's also an exit advisor. And we're excited, because we have so many business owners come into the Shrimp Tank and pretty much, they scale their business and then they get into this lifestyle stage where like they don't really know who to, sell the business to, right? Can an employee take over? They're not sure, right? Is it someone in the family that should take over, right? Or is it someone from the outside? And then is their business really set up to sell, right? Do they have the correct CRM? Can they walk away, right? Me being a financial advisor, I see this all the time. I was like, these folks are just, you know, they can't go on vacation. They got to be around the business all the time. They didn't build it the correct way. So I'm really interested about this episode to really hear from you, and I think a lot of our past business owners, right, are going to get a lot of value from this episode. So, Charlie, welcome to the Shrimp Tank. I guess to kick things off, tell us about your businesses. To kick things off.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate you
Yep.
inviting me to be here today. So I spent about 30 years in Silicon Valley growing tech companies, a lot like you.
Yeah.
Pioneer companies in software development and analytics, and last 10 years, artificial intelligence. But when I set that aside, my wife and I moved out here and didn't know anybody. So I figured out, what do I do at this stage of my life? And I love working with entrepreneurs, bright, talented people. And what I found along the way in my first couple of years of coaching them on growth is that more and more they started using words like legacy, but they didn't know how to get there. They didn't even know what it meant. So a hallmark of a lot of us entrepreneurs is that we don't spend time planning for ourselves. We might plan for our business, but we don't plan for what an exit means. And most of us have no idea what all the options are. So FocalPoint Growth and Exit Advisory builds on that, where we collaborate with a host of advisors. I focus down in the business on the mechanics of scaling a business, making it more profitable, making it more transferable. But the other advisors focus on things like financial wherewithal. Do they have the right insurance to avoid the tax? So all the things you need to exit your business with the legacy that matches your blueprint, to either go on and start another business or to retire in some French island.
What's specific target do you reach, right? Because when you say working with business owners, it's kind of all over the map, right? I see a lot of coaches. I ask them that question, like, well, I work with startups, then I work with companies doing 100 million in revenue. I'm like, the math doesn't math, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have learned from others that have come on the Shrimp Tank, when you start working with the startup world, you have a love and passion for it, but also, the checks aren't written, right? And you'll go out of business. And a lot of people then say, okay, this coaching thing wasn't for me. We see a high failure rate when people try to help the startup community. So what is the target that you're working with, to kind of define it a bit more?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
My passion would be working with startups. That's kind of where I gravitated late in my career when I was actually working for the companies. But you're right, they can't afford to pay you, and the odds are really bad. So my bread and butter business, our business is somewhere between 2 million and 25 million that want to double or triple in the next couple of years. I originally aimed at tech companies because that's where I came from. But since I'm not really doing consulting, I'm actually working them through a curriculum of planning and organizational design and sales and marketing and leadership. It really can be any industry. So ironically, down here in South Florida, about 30% of my business is trades, because they hit natural stall points where everything used to work, but all of a sudden the owner can't keep scaling the business because they can't do the selling and the delivery, and they got to bring in an integrator.
Me and Kevin talk about this all the time, right? There are so many family style businesses down here in the trades, and Pop's running it in his 60s and 70s. The kids start joining the business in their 20s and 30s. Pop's still doing the old ads, right, where they're sending flyers to the home. The flyers aren't working. They're not converting. And he's still happy, though, with the revenue kind of flatline, when the younger generation's like, what are we doing here? Like, I want to grow this thing, right? I want to buy other similar brands down the block, right? Merge them in, or they want to add on Facebook ads, whatever it might be. But Kevin, we see this all the time, what he's bringing about, right?
Yeah, and that brings into a lot of the stuff, the family dynamics, and that's really Roland's more expertise. But there's also, governance issues and all sorts of stuff that can come up, whether or not it's even a family business, right? Managerial control, organizational structure. there's a lot of things that actually matter, right? When a business gets to that size, whereas like most of the companies I work with, I'm like, let's see if it's a company before we even worry about kind of some of these things, like make a prototype. Like we can always file forms and do some stuff later. Because as you said, so many of them don't really turn into an ongoing. We don't always need to have, a full board and a governance structure. And it's like, this isn't even a company yet. But at that stage, yeah, those things matter and they have an impact. And there are kind of more efficient ways to operate and definitely less efficient as well.
And there's a big difference between the tech companies that are so common coming here at FAU and the more brick and mortar companies or the trades companies. They're different ball games.
So explain it a tad more, right? You meet someone at a networking event, right? What is your approach, right? I think often people see your profession and we see it all over social media, like, oh, I could coach entrepreneurs, and you see people doing all these videos, and then all of a sudden they bring them, to some type of conversion on Instagram, and then you're jumping on a Zoom meeting with 20 other people for $99, and then there's some high ticket sale, like one-on-one coaching, $25,000 a year, and I'm gonna make you a billionaire in the next 24 months, and it's bullshit, right? It's just not, it doesn't typically work. You see a huge fall off rate. People join the first session. The people who buy the high coaching package complain later on that it was a scam. Like you see so much of that in your world. And it's so hard because then there's so many people out there like myself who run a business that get emails all the time to say they could help my business, right? And they could do similar things. So how do you separate yourself from all the saturation in the coaching world, and tell us just those initial steps? Like if I'm a customer of yours with Owl, for example, I'm a tech brand, right? And let's say I was doing 2 to 25 million over here. Obviously we're startup, we're not at that level, but make believe we were. What would you then be advising me? Kind of give us those steps.
When I first came here from California, I didn't know anybody. So there was a lot of that cold conversation thing. And really, when you move from being in a business to coaching others who are the gladiators in the arena, there is that tendency to try to sell them on it.
Yeah.
You can't sell coaching. That is just, those out there, I would say, 80% of coaches out there are peddling their wares, and the chance of success is really, really low. So in my case, where I've evolved my practice is now everything I do is word of mouth through my personal referral networks. I'm in a couple tight referral groups, but most of my business comes from my clients who know other entrepreneurs. And for me, at this stage of my life, I'm 62. I really don't have time or a lot of interest in chasing people around, trying to convince them that they should start training. So I'm kind of looking for the people who are a little more subtle, who are ambitious, but they're frustrated. They're a little bit overstressed. And when they're introduced to me, they take me seriously. So my conversations are different than a lot of.
And where does it go from there? So they come in, a warm referral. They see that you've helped their friend, and their friends, at the pickleball courts telling them, hey, like this is a person, sit down with them for an hour, and they've helped me a lot. They just, make sure that I'm in the correct mindset. They look at our systems, of course, making sure that we're not overlooking systems that could improve profitability. So like where do you go next? Because I think lots of people get these emails from coaching, but like it's not defined often, right?
Well, I'm just going to put it out there. I think a lot of coaches out there weren't good at what they did before, and they buy a coaching program and they try to make that fit everybody. So for better or worse, I've grown 3 organizations from 0 to 100 million, did another 7 startups that are still around today, but grew past 5 million. So I got good at growing things. But when I got into coaching, I actually have licensed 4 different coaching systems. So I meet clients and businesses where they're at. And I do that because I can't golf. This is how I have fun. So, foundationally for me, one thing I use is something called positive intelligence, which is one of the biggest coaching systems in the world, but it's about mindset coaching. And gosh, that starts for $900 for a year. You can license the software. So it's an easy entry point. And I started inserting that with coaches or clients who just got stuck and couldn't act when we build a plan. They were blocked with anger or stress. But then the other things I do are, the one-on-one coaching or group coaching. I do organizational EOS, So orchestrating an organization into scaling up an organization. And then I do the exit planning with, valuation software and things like that. So with me, what keeps this interesting for me is I almost always start in a different place with every client. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. You have to always think outside the box. Not every client's a tad different, but a lot of the systems are the same though. Right.
The systems are very different.
Like,
but the key thing you have to have is you have to have a gap.
Yeah.
The client has to tell you that they're in enough pain. So they either are frustrated with how much work they're putting in or how much money they're spending, and they're just stalled. They can't get past a certain threshold. And the thing we learn in academia and we learn in coaching is that there are predictable stall points for every business out there. So you're not a rocket science when you come in and you see where someone's stalled. And then you apply the right tool set and the formulas for moving them on from that.
Do you find most of your clients really just want to grow the business, get higher revenue, or they really want to exit the business? They're at this point where they're burnt out, right? They have a good amount of money in their 401k, they're home, they could live comfortably, they just want to get out, but they don't have a buyer, right? Or they can't, not only that they don't have a buyer, but they don't have the systems in place to sell it to the right buyer because they know they're going to get nothing for the business if it's sold the way it currently is. So which one is it? Is it just growing businesses or is it more on the exit side?
I'm going to give you a public service announcement. So for me, my interest is primarily growing business. But what most advisors find, and I think I'd mentioned to you when we were offline that I'm president of the Exit Planning Institute down here in South Florida. What advisors, estate planners, CPAs, what we all find is that most business owners are so busy just trying to drive through that growth that they don't take care to do the planning for their business. And what we almost all find out across all of our professions is most business owners come to us to start talking about their exit when it's too late for any of us to help them.
Yeah.
It's the 5 Ds: death, divorce, disability, disagreement with a partner, or a disaster. I would say more than 50% of the time, I turn down clients that want to plan for an exit because I don't feel like there's much value for me to add because the sales are already going down, or their health is going down, or their work hours have already gone down to a level, and we don't have somebody in the wings to pick it up. So the business isn't worth it for someone to come in and invest it to pick it back up. And that happens pretty often.
Mm-hmm. We've seen that on the Shrimp Tank. We've had people come in here and say they bought a company, pennies on the dollar, didn't have to put any money out, all private financing. And then they figured it out, right? And grew a business quite large, but they got it for pennies on the dollar. Well, here's a lot of people today, always think like, oh, I got to buy this business, for $4 million, $10 million. And it's very expensive, but we've seen very unique scenarios come into the Shrimp Tank where they've paid under $100,000 and then grown revenue back up over in the millions, right? A few years later.
There's two different worlds here. There's the tech world where there's series of venture or private equity invested at various gateways that are very well understood in the investment community. I'm not really talking about that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm really talking about Main Street businesses or bootstrapped businesses where
the trades, anything, plumbing,
plumbing.
You have the roof cleaning company, you have the guy laying pavers, the pool company.
The statistic that everybody should know about is the Exit Planning Institute surveyed over a decade thousands of businesses that put themselves up for sale. And the statistic is only about 24% of businesses that put themselves up for sale actually sell. Now, that's not to say that they don't liquidate for some damages, but that's not what an entrepreneur spends their life trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just started a new area of research. Maybe I'll ask you a question. A lot of times us researchers can't figure things out. It's focused on entrepreneurship through acquisition. So it's all about kind of business, small. We're not talking private equity. We're not talking LBOs. Like one business owner sells it to a future business owner. All right. So I have a ton of data from BVR. Do you know that group? Business Valuation Resources. Yeah. Brokers report this stuff to them. One of the things we found that this is kind of obscure, but maybe feel free to wildly speculate. So we found some results in our data that we don't really have any theory to explain. Here's what it is. What we found was that rural businesses that are very profitable fetch a superior premium in terms of the multiple at the exit, right? So they're very, very attractive as a sale. Now, rural businesses that aren't very aren't very profitable, they're worth almost nothing. And now when you look at the urban businesses across the same spectrum, so not very profitable to really profitable, their multiples are pretty flat. And it's, if they're not profitable, they're not worth as much. If they are, they're worth more. But if they're rural, they're worth almost nothing if they're not profitable. If they're profitable, they're worth more.
Well, first off, I'm still basking that you said I said something smart. So now I want to ask a follow-up question to see if, but do your study correlate like business to like business?
Yeah, we can chop it up by industry and look, but the results are still there. And some industries, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, look, the only thing I can venture is I use one of the commercial systems for valuing and scaling businesses called Value Builder. And literally when we evaluate a business and we come up on a bell curve of the value of a business with its corresponding multiple, there's really 8 major areas that we look at for a business, that how involved the owner is in the sales and marketing, how much recurring revenue there is, what their cash flow looks like, how differentiated their software or their processes are. And those are usually the correlations that drive the multiple. So the only thing I could venture to say, urban to rural, is that rural, because of geographic distances, especially if we're talking outside of Florida and the middle part of the country here, you're more self-sufficient. So that could be a reason why the business has a slightly better multiple. Yeah. Or it could be more attracted to the buyer who needs the business, and there's less competition for businesses to buy. So those are my 2 guesses.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we're digging into the data a little bit further. We're going to investigate assets a little bit more because maybe they also have a tendency to have more property ownership as compared to like leasing in terms of like property because it's rural, but also maybe other equipment assets that might have a role. But
I would love to look at your data and compare it with some of the systems that I use, the commercial systems. So I'd love to help you find that correlation.
Perfect. Well, as a proper scientific researcher, I can send you stuff and data until you tell me to stop. So we'll start slow and good. Maybe we'll publish a paper together.
That would be cool.
All right. Well, it's not fun and it takes a long time, but I'm game if you are.
I'm game. That's where my life has come now. Is I'm at 62. I'm doing all this for fun. This is my second career.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When you get back, we're going to jump into our hot or not segment of the show.
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Good afternoon, everybody. That was the OWL commercial. If you're not on the app, go ahead and download it in the App Store or the Google Play Store and use the code HOOT, and you will get a $10 credit in your account to make some calls to all of our past guests on the Shrimp Tank, as well as Dr. Kevin Cox. He's
That's
on
right. 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. Hit me up on OWL.
Tuesdays. This guy's available 10 o'clock. Just call him and pick his brain about anything or pitch a collaboration. I think too often people are thinking about it just for advice. Not at all. You call Kevin and get in this new book that he's about to write with our guest, Charlie, right? And pitch him to speak in his class, pitch anything, pitch him to come on the Shrimp Tank, whatever it might be. Just call him and chat and collaborate. Okay, Charlie, on this segment of the show, it's called What's Hot, right? So we're going to bring up a topic, dive into, what's hot about it in your profession, right? So when we talk about traditional networking, is it still hot, right? When we talk about these groups like BNIs, right? I'm in a group where it's all business owners, for example, and I don't know anymore, right? It used to be the hottest thing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but is that still hot these days?
It is hot.
Okay, explain why.
Well, first off, because nobody wants to do business with a stranger. It's easier to do business with a friend. So by joining an effective networking or referral-based organization, you are just that much further ahead. And I'll give you an example. So I'm a group lead of something called Provisors, which is a national group of professional advisors that advise business owners and very wealthy families. And 2 years ago in Florida, there were no chapters. Now there are 14 chapters averaging about 35 members, where the members pay about $2,300 a year to join. And most advisors get more than 50% of their business through that.
So why is the next generation not doing it, right? When we look at a lot of students at FAU, right, they'll graduate from the FAU College of Business, right? A lot of them are business owners, right? But I feel like they skip it, right? It's like, nope, not going that way. And they're on social media, right? Everything's TikTok marketing, Instagram marketing, DMing, email automation these days. Everything's automated, of course, but networking is just good old human skills, talking and then saying, let's grab a bite after the bigger group one-on-one for coffee or lunch or breakfast, whatever it might be. So why do you think the next generation is not adapting to traditional networking styles?
Well, I'm surprised to hear that, because I get invited to a lot of free networking events that are just packed here in South Florida.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody when I moved here. So I used to go to those things that are, I can't remember the name. I'd give them a shout out, but it's on Eventbrite, and they alternate between West Palm Beach and Boca, and you go in and you meet about 40 people and you have a drink or two and you meet some people, and they're fun.
Yeah, ton of opportunities and events, especially in our entrepreneurship and business owner ecosystem. We've got a bunch of new chapters of search funders for people getting together with the explicit purpose of wanting to learn about and potentially acquire businesses. So that's becoming more popular and active down here. Let me ask you about something else. You said your most recent experiences in technology yourself were in the areas of AI. So what's the hottest thing in AI to you? I know there's a broad kind of spectrum of always evolving AI. What do you see as the hottest area or app or tool, or what's hot?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because the last 10 years that I was working out in Silicon Valley, I did robotics, I did visual AI, I did acoustic AI. I've looked at them all. There's a lot of skepticism about the usefulness of it for business. So I'm using a lot of the conversational AI, the Grammarly, for writing like an adult instead of a guy that looks like writes like a guy from Ohio with average education. I love to use Chat GPT. It's amazing the number of engagements where somebody needs to write a job description or something like that, and I can just take a source, copy it, and in about 2 minutes send them while we're talking an example. So I really like the conversational AI. And an interesting thing for the businesses, the reason why it's so important if you've got a medium-sized business, is more and more of it being democratized now. Like, most of the funding comes from Google and Amazon, where they're building these language models. 4 years ago, when I was still working out in California, a lot of the training of the systems was super manual, which meant you really couldn't apply it to a smaller business. Now, more and more of the machine learning is really kicking in, where the systems are continuously teaching itself about the things like slang words and people's dialects. So it's becoming more and more useful, so that your business can always be available to its clients 24/7. No matter the peak and valley of the input, it's there. And it gives you at least an initial way of engaging with your client and not missing them. So I'm a big fan.
So what are hot ways to get your business owners to adapt, though? Right? Because that's the biggest challenge, right? A lot of these business owners are in their 60s and 70s, and they come to you and say, I have a growth problem. And then you tell them, okay, use ChatGPT, at least on some of this stuff. Like, obviously, like if they send 30 different types of emails to people, you're like, put it down on paper and then auto respond with the same ones. Like just get a cleaner system on your CRM, right? And lots of times they're like, well, I'm old school. Here's my good old Cellosaurus, like the flip phone comes out and like I call people, right? So how as a coach do you actually get them to start creating those correct habits to use this technology in the first place?
Well, usually a lot of business owners that I'm dealing with want to double or triple their revenue. So selling is state of the mind. And AI-based applications, or let's just say the applications we already know, like LinkedIn and Word and your email systems are already AI powered. So one of my favorite things is, okay, if you want to sell to somebody, you kind of want to know what their personality is like ahead of time. You can use LinkedIn, and they bought the Crystal capability, and that's the personality profiling, where you can get your salesperson can get a profile. Is this a person I'm talking to is likely that wants me to net it out, or they want the extended description? So I think you can use AI in that example to connect and be more credible to your clients more quickly.
Kevin, he's got the solution for your LinkedIn.
Yeah,
we always talk about this. He's got no time.
It's getting close.
He's got like 7 minutes a week on LinkedIn, right? So that's 7 minutes powered by AI. You might be able to interact with 100 different people.
Yeah,
or the right people.
Yeah, yeah. It's coming. We're so close. I can taste
It's Owl. Owl's easier. People just call you.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Definitely. I'm waiting for the day when the damn image generation can work together with the conversation or word generation. That's the only thing that's still driving me.
It's happening with Apple next week.
I use
They just
AI
announced
all
it.
the time, and it can make beautiful, amazing, copyright-free images. It can communicate and write at any level you possibly want it to. I could make it write at such a high level nobody would even buy that I were writing it. But if you try to put the two together and make an image with words on it, it spells everything wrong. So I'm just waiting for that last piece, and I'm going to be able to do so much more.
Well, the pace of change is just accelerating, but I think there's a lot of societal things that we're going to have to come to grips with security and validation of the images. So that's a big topic for businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what are some hot ways to buy a business? Right, often people hear about SBA loans, right? They hear about private financing. Obviously, a lot of people don't have access to this money to go out and buy a business doing $1 million of revenue, right? So often they end up starting a business, which is actually a lot harder, right? Again, a business from 0 to 1 million is extremely difficult, right? It's a lot easier to go out and get a loan or find something unique. So what are hot ways? Because you've seen it all, right? You see all these other exit advisors saying, "Oh, this is how we structured the deal." So what are some hot ways that our audience should know about? Just ways to buy a business.
To buy a business. Well, a hot way, especially if you're coming from the corporate world, I recommend franchise systems. So if you're not, if you're a burning trailblazer kind of person who doesn't like rules and likes to build everything from the ground up, by all means, just be an entrepreneur and start at the ground up. But most of us, depending on our needs, whether it's an income or a way of an investment vehicle, franchise systems are really great.
And another thing that I am, at least anecdotally, I don't have the data. Well, I do have some of the data, I guess. A hot way that I would advise people to pursue if they're in that scenario where they don't have cash and they may need additional kind of coaching help, advising, is owner financing.
Yeah.
Right. Owner financing can be a great proposition. You can pay the owner to stick around for a while, kind of make sure the transition's nice. And, financially, obviously, it can be okay. Certainly, I know some owners, they want the one big check and they want to move on. And then that's kind of it. But that's not always the case. And you look at kind of some of the things you've mentioned already, the tax planning and the income considerations. and current interest rates, you may find a business owner that's like, hey, if you spread this income out over kind of these years, and I buy the business with your help from you, end up making a lot more and may not realize as much taxable income all at once.
Well, that's true. But I have to say, the owners that I get 5 years out, I work really hard to get them in a position where they don't have to finance a buyer, because that goes wrong a lot. And if this is your legacy, if you're picturing yourself buying another business is one thing, but if it's just traveling and enjoying life, the last thing I want to worry about is some clown coming into my business and, running it down and then leaving me with what's left without getting all my income. And I just think that happens a lot. I like the fact that you mentioned the small business loans, though, because there's some new programs that have come out over the last couple of years that put an extension on all kinds of different ways of exiting your business. So it used to be that families, an adult that wants to exit the business, did the personal loan to their children. I like the idea of having your kids take the loan and making sure that mom and dad have the money in the bank to secure their legacy. We see something special. So my other business is in-home care. And what we see is people have worked their whole life that can't afford the care they need at the end of life because they didn't plan for it. We see it all the time. So it's a tragedy. So you'll see that I'm super conservative with my owners of trying to make sure that their finances are secure. And a good SBA loan gives the kids a good chance to scale up, put skin in the game of the business, and grow it.
Yeah.
One other thing that I love, that I think's hot, is this idea in construction right now. You guys, I don't know if you know, but ESOPs are becoming a preferred way to exit your business. And the floor for your EBITDA numbers has really gone down because of some government programs that make ESOPs more approachable. And for those of you that aren't familiar with them, the idea of an ESOP is you become like a retirement fund for your employees. You don't necessarily lose control of your business. It doesn't mean voting control, but it means a share of the future proceeds of the business. And the advantage there is that then you don't pay taxes on your company. So you can invest that money that you would have spent in taxes to grow the business more.
Yeah. That sounds like a fantastic plan. I wasn't familiar with some of those recent regulatory changes either.
And the good old Robs Act. We'll leave it at that. You want to Google the Robs Act. There's some interesting things you could do with your 401k and buy businesses, of course. We're going to take a quick commercial break here from our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
This episode of the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank is brought to you in part by the Florida Atlantic Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. Once again, this fall semester, we are offering our program for would-be future entrepreneurs and business owners to learn everything they need to know about starting and growing their growing their business. That's right. It's the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp. It starts September 26th. It is at noon. It's 8 weeks long. It is absolutely free for any students out there. So just go ahead and sign up. And it's also very affordable for staff, faculty, and anybody in the South Florida community. It is in person, so I hope to see you there. We're also taking applications for our Veterans Florida Entrepreneurship Program, the early stage cohort. So that's for people with just ideas, very early stage, who happen to be veterans and residing in the state of Florida. You can register now. Just Google FAU Adams Center. Everything's there. Hope to see you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. And that was a commercial from FAU. So, of course, go ahead and just throw it into Google, and FAU Adams Center will pop up and pretty much look at all these different offerings that they have. So many people get involved with FAU, and of course they are growing and doing so many good things. So, Charlie, on this segment show, it's called Plead the Fifth. So we're going to ask you a question. If you don't want to answer it, you just say, I plead the fifth, right? But you only get one time on the show to say I plead the fifth. You say it 2 times, Kevin goes over to our producer and he pulls your whole show off. We don't air it. You're not allowed on the website. It's a new rule. Part of the new rules that Kevin made, right, Kevin? Is the new rules of the new show? No, it's not the new rules. Okay, we're just toying with you, of course. But tell us about a situation where financing went wrong. We were just talking about buying a business, and he was saying private financing, and it sounds like you got a story to tell. Maybe someone did something to a child, and then all of a sudden, like, never got repaid, or someone did private financing and the company went belly up and didn't get all their payments. But tell us an interesting story where someone went the wrong direction, even though they thought it was the right direction, of course.
It's such a sad story, but I've seen it multiple times now, where an owner doesn't really plan for how they're going to sell their business. So they sell to the person who just comes along,
Yeah.
instead of the ideal buyer. And gosh, what a surprise. Maybe it's an employee who's been coming up, or maybe it's a child, or maybe it's just a neighbor who needs a lifestyle. And they buy into the business, but they don't have the money to pay the actual value of the business. So the owner finances it. And what happens in a regular basis is that these people come into the business like a tenant, and they try it. And they may try, but they don't have the sales skills. They don't have the drive that the owner did. And after a year or two, they just peter out. The sales of the business go down, and then they can't continue to make the payment. And the seller doesn't have the money that they had planned on when they made the decision to sell the business. And they have a business that's been seriously degraded in performance. I can think of 3 circumstances where I saw that happen.
All right, so I've got one for you. Now, it sounds like you've had a lot of success and some pretty good luck in your time in the startup world. And I am one who believes that there is some luck involved in the crazy startup world, no matter how good you are or what you get involved with is. You've been involved with enough. You had to be affiliated or associated or maybe even co-founder of something that failed. Tell us one of those stories.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of stories of failure. So the companies that I worked with through the years that scaled, some of them had some really big exits. But the early stage companies where I came in as one of the first 5 employees, there's a natural tendency between the founder of the company who's getting investments, and he's telling the investor what the revenue stream is going to be based on some pretty favorable circumstances. And then they bring in a VP of sales, that's me, come walking in the door like Gomer Pyle, where he says, okay, build a plan to execute that and to do it with this budget. And generally those ideas don't line up.
Now, that's funny because every time I'm hearing one of these pitches and they show me the projections, they love to all use this same word. Conservative projections. Oh, they're not conservative. Would you believe that crazy hockey stick up to the right isn't conservative? Yeah. I'm familiar with that approach to pitching investors.
Well, there's a statistic that in Silicon Valley, the average tenure for a VP of sales is something like 1.3 years. It's because of that. Because there's so many new businesses, and there's just, businesses are going through these investment stages, and at each time there's these new expectations being set. And usually, especially if the company's pivoting and switching to a whole new product line where they're assuming that there's going to be no reset time, or when they decide to fire the sales force and bring in all new people, there's no allocation towards a ramp up time. Even though statistics tell us that salespeople in tech environments rarely spin up and become fully effective before 9 months. That's never really built into the model.
No. Well, that wouldn't be a super attractive investable model.
I'll tell you what, I do want to say, I've been part of the good part of it. One of the first companies I joined in tech was a company called Rational Software, and they had only been profitable about 3 quarters in their existence. And I joined them, they were about 30 million in sales. And we just hit the perfect string where we never missed our numbers for, I think we had like 28 consecutive quarters of exceeding our numbers, perfectly setting expectations with investors and with the salespeople, and had complete alignment. And that was a company that sold to IBM for $2.1 billion.
Oh, and an appropriately named company.
Rational, yeah.
Yeah, based on, the way they put those projections together, I suppose, and hit all those benchmarks.
It was the company that had the best culture I ever worked for. And the people that worked there went on to start Amazon Web Services. Reed Hastings was briefly there, so he went to Netflix. And then my mentor in life went and became the CEO of TriNet, which is the world's largest PEO company. So there's some really good bones for the executives that came from that company.
Nice.
Okay, here come the hard balls.
Okay, let's go.
Let's keep them for the end of the show. So your wife, is CEO of the home care business,
Yes.
and I know you do work with her on that. What's your biggest pet peeve of working with your wife? Obviously, you help all these other entrepreneurs, and obviously you come home. He's like, "Why don't you try this?" She's like, "Shh," right? She might do that. I don't know, but what is your biggest pet peeve? I guess trying to help your wife with her business.
I plead the fifth.
There you go.
Wow,
Good
that was
answer.
fast.
I knew he was looking at me. He's like, "I'm taking."
Are you
I'm taking-
crazy? Actually,
Smart man.
I
See,
ha-
that
I
was the
have
best
to
thing you
tell
did
the
all day.
truth. She won't have any of it. So everything she's accomplished, she has done by herself, with the exception every once in a while she'll tap me on the shoulder to move some furniture or to go maybe drive a caregiver around or something in an emergency.
Well, we'll have to have her on the Shrimp Tank and ask her that same question about you.
She would have a lot of opinions of how she's helped me along
See if
the
she
way. And
pleads the fifth, or she leans right into that one.
oh, she'd lean into it. She's not afraid of me, but I'm fearful of her.
Yeah,
All right. Well, got him.
that's good. You don't have to come home with flowers today. You're good.
It's
Glad to
usually a
fit.
good idea anyhow, though.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay. Well, Charlie, thank you for joining us on the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, if they want to get in touch, what are the best routes?
The best way is via my website, charliejanes.focalpointcoaching.com.
Awesome. Everyone listening, back next Wednesday, right around 1:00 on our live platforms at Shrimp Tank Boca. Take care.
Bye.